Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mamluks podcast. My name is Sim. Along with me are my co-hosts Shaykh Amir and more.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you all for joining us this wonderful Sunday afternoon. Before we get started, help us out on patreon.com/the Mamluks. This organization relies completely on your support. Anything that you can do will help us and will be greatly appreciated. Our guest today is the current president of the Islamic Circle of North America. Please welcome Dr. Muhsin Ansari. Dr. Muhsin Ansari, Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. How are you?
Good. Inshallah, we're looking forward to having a good discussion with you, and hopefully we can understand at the end of this podcast why ICNA rules and ICNA drools.
Okay.
All right. You do know we're a little bit crazy here, and that's what you kind of signed up for coming on the show. But it's really a pleasure to have you on. I can tell you from my experience, very few heads of organizations are willing to talk about some of the more important things that we're going to talk about throughout this conversation. And I have to commend you for coming on the show and talking about some of these questions that many Muslims have throughout America, Canada, in general, the Western world, related to where the future of ICNA or organizations such as ICNA is going towards politically, socially, and even economically. And we hope that you can help us make sense of where you guys stand on some of these hot button issues, inshallah.
Yeah.
All right. So just we're an international podcast, and there's a lot of people who may not know exactly what the Islamic Circle of North America is, and maybe you can give them a brief backdrop of what you guys do and where you guys are at right now.
All right. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. Yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum. Wa man yuti Allaha wa rasulahu faqad faza fawzan azima. Sadaqallahu al-azim. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to be here in your show. And I want to thank all those and say assalamu alaikum to all the viewers who are listening to this podcast. I don't know where to start the story of ICNA, but since you said it shortly and briefly, ICNA started its journey with a 7-member organization in 1968 in a small apartment by 7 students who migrated mostly from Pakistan and some from India to start an organization where they can practice the religion. And you can imagine 1968 how the conditions were. Inshallah, during the course of that discussion, I probably will highlight a little more of that story. And after 5+ decades of our work, ICNA has established a lot of departments, divisions, programs, and currently Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessing that we have a vast following in this country. ICNA Canada is a different organization, but is originally was together. So ICNA USA is a different organization. Currently, we work in international scenario through our charity organizations like Helping Hand. We work mainly in USA with various divisions. I would say we have a rough calculation of a large membership and following volunteers. And according to some of the rough calculations, more than 200,000 people only in USA have some affiliation with ICNA. As a member, as a volunteer, as a supporter, as core worker, shura members, and so forth. Currently, Alhamdulillah, ICNA probably is the largest Muslim organization, not only in USA, actually in the whole Western world. So this is just a brief synopsis who we are. But inshallah, I think during the course of this discussion, I'll be able to say something more.
Okay,
about it.
inshallah. So, in terms of what's happening right now, ICNA is, at least from the outsider's perspective, it seems like it has its hands in many different parts of American society, Muslim American society. It has, grassroots activities that are happening. It's working with refugees. Shaykh Amir used to work with a branch of ICNA. Maybe you can speak a little bit better about it than I can, Shaykh.
Yeah.
But can you talk about what you used to do?
Yes. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. First of all, thank you for coming on, Doctor. It's nice to have you on. I used to work with, Islamic Learning Foundation originally in 2012. ICNA and Islamic Learning Foundation had basically sponsored me when I went to Egypt to study, came back, and I used to teach for Islamic Learning Foundation, which was a branch of ICNA, and then worked with ICNA Relief for about a year or two. I've been pretty well connected with a lot of the brothers in Chicago and know some of them very well that are associated with ICNA and Gain Peace, like Dr. Sabil. And so the presence has always been in our area, in the Midwest especially, and in Chicago. I know that every single one of the branches have their own sub-organization to a certain degree. But yeah, my experience has been, on an academic level, on a friendship level with a lot of the community members that are associated with ICNA. Our masjid used to be, pretty, heavily influenced by ICNA also.
Yeah, I mean, I think for all of us that have grown up, especially in the Midwest, ICNA and ISNA both, but ICNA was primarily one of the events that we'd always see around. I remember early on they had the learning competition, all that stuff. And I think what a lot of our listeners, and especially us, like me, I'm not too involved in the organizations, and I attend the events. But I think from the outside perspective, a lot of us it seems to be like there's a shift in a lot of these Islamic organizations into what they were to what they're becoming. And I think that, it's kind of ambiguous for some people, right? Meaning that especially people who have been around and grew up, starting from the 80s. And I think what we're trying to get at is, at least in my mind, is this. So we always traditionally, and I think we have to split this up before. I'm trying to lay the background, so just be a little patient with me here, Doctor. I just wanted to kind of let you know where we're coming from.
Well, one of the most important things we just wanted to lay this information down is because we want to know Dr. Muhsin is among friends. The questions we are asking him are from a place of goodness. We want to clarify some things, and we don't want anyone to understand that, hey, there's some kind of rudeness or some kind of
course. I mean, we all definitely
we all benefited from it in many ways, and that's why we're kind of letting people know about this.
So with that being said, I think it's important to note that specifically for the American Muslim, there was a pre 9/11 and there was a post 9/11 world, right? And pre 9/11, we all were familiar with how these organizations were, what the focus was. It was mainly about community building, a place to gather, a place for students, for kids to come together and have competitions, compete in Quran and different various Islamic subjects, and then kind of have a meeting point. Right. And I feel like post 9/11, rightfully so, the community had to become a little more politically aware and active. And I think that kind of it was understandable and justifiable in that time that Muslims needed to make their stance clear about who they were, what they believe, and what their role in the communities were. And I think a lot of people, especially in my generation, understood that, right? Because we were also faced with the same problem, with this huge identity crisis, right? And I think now, 20 plus years past 9/11, I think for the most part, most of the Muslim community is comfortable with our identity and where we are and what our relationship is in terms of being an American and also being Muslim, and then within the U.S. government and things like that. And I think now what we're seeing is that there is a political change that's happening, not with the Muslims alone, but with the entire landscape of the country. And that is reflected in the type of individuals that are being elected and that are being invited to speak. And I think the bulk of this, what I'm getting at, is that there is a concern in the community that not just ICNA, but organizations in general are tending to become more political, trending in that direction. And it's a certain political agenda that many of us who were more traditional in values early on, as these organizations were, are kind of seeing a bit of a clash, right? Like there's ideas of, is it really necessary to have such of a political atmosphere tied into what was originally just an Islamic convention? And I think, let's start with that. I think before we get into any real heavy questions, I want to ask you first, where does ICNA see itself in terms of this modern Muslim identity that includes the politics that we have around us now? Like, what is the goal of ICNA, or what is its role in this position?
Okay. Let me actually, I'm very glad that we will be talking about the questions. Actually, let me start with this. When the questions come about an organization, ICNA and many other Muslim organizations unfortunately have this disadvantage. Then that when there is a question about ICNA, for example, last year convention, I think we were discussing the speakers invited in last convention. This is the first time I'm sitting in front of a podcast where the president of ICNA is answering what was the reason ICNA had a speaker or different speakers or the policies. Unfortunately, it is like all Western media, CNN, for example. When they have a question about, or they want to have an expert on Sunni Islam, for example. You know what? Always an expert on Sunni Islam in CNN will be a non-Muslim who doesn't even know what Islam is. He probably has written a book about Islam and he becomes the expert on Sunni Islam and he gives a huge talk, and they never invite a scholar, Muslim Sunni scholar, to tell what Sunni Islam is. Similarly, other issues. So after that convention and the politicization and inviting speakers and so forth, nobody ever came to ICNA to ask, what was your rationale? What is your answer? People started making videos, podcasts, asking everybody else in the world except ICNA that what is your point of view about this? I'm glad, inshallah, we'll be talking about that. I think it will be a little beneficial. And let me ask three of you who are here. It may help me to just navigate the discussion a little better. Any one of you have recently, this last convention or any convention before this convention attended?
Yeah.
I did for a day. I'll be honest with you though, a lot of it was in the bazaar, but yes, I did.
Yeah, I've been there in the past, but not like the whole entire 3 days. But sometimes a bazaar, I'll usually sneak into the speakers without paying, with the badge and stuff. I'm one of those people. I'll like distract them, create a diversion about someone else sneaking in, and I'll sneak in.
Oh my God.
But Shaykh Amir, he's very connected with ICNA, so he attends religiously.
No, I mean not religiously, but yes, I mean
there's the WAF around.
There's been times. Yes, I know a lot of the speakers. I attend. I also used to when I work with ICNA Relief and just used to be at a booth, and I know the people in the circuit, alhamdulillah, for the most part pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I used to attend as a child, meaning like actually in the teens era, and as of recent,
Yeah, I mean, I should clarify. I did grow up attending ICNA and ICNA convention. So in recent years, people get busy with family and things like that. I haven't been able to attend as much as I'd like to, but I definitely was growing up, and in maybe only until the past 5 years, I haven't really been able to really attend. But I am familiar with the format and many of the speakers and people involved. So yes, I have an idea of what the ICNA convention is about.
All right. So the reason I asked that question, this last convention in May in Baltimore, anyone who has attended that convention, go and ask them, what was the feeling? And I asked that as the president of ICNA, walking in bazaars and sessions, salat, all the time. I talk to people. You know, the most common response I get, the reason we are here is because of the spiritual uplifting. It is because of what we get inside as a Muslim. The whole environment, whether even you are in bazaar, you're in play area, you are in basketball court at 2 a.m. with the young Muslims, or you are in Qiyamul Lail at 2 a.m. with a beautiful recitation of Qaris. You're praying with 15, 20,000 individuals with several thousand hijabi sisters. The environment tells the answer. Is it a change in ICNA's policies and convention and the whole outlook? The whole environment will tell you. Many attendees will come and tell us this is a feeling as if we are in haram after particularly salat periods. So many of them. Streets of Baltimore, or before that in Washington, D.C., are filled with hijabi sisters and young brothers with their thobes. The whole environment tells the story, what ICNA is and what ICNA is promoting in our attendees and our policies. Now,
yeah. No, I understand that part. So I think sorry to cut you off, but just to kind of clarify, I think I would agree in some degree that there's a feeling of community at all of these events, right? And I think that is I think no one ever disputes that. Like when we come to the events, it's a meeting of Muslims and we feel closeness and we feel a bit of spiritual elevation because we're around people with knowledge and so forth and so on. And I don't want to take that away from the group, but I think what we're getting at is that has always been the case with many of these Islamic conferences from day one, right? The meeting of the minds and the spiritual aspect of it. I think what we're more concerned with right now at the moment, though, is like the political part of it. Like how does ICNA view itself in this new political landscape? Because you're older than I am, mashallah, and I'm sure you understand that there was a big difference post 9/11, right? Like meaning as far as our Muslim identity, as far as the scrutiny into us. And I think from that time we saw a shift in the way that communities branded themselves or presented themselves. So I guess we want to speak more on that issue because I think that's truly where I feel people have this disconnect with organizations, right? Like, hey, what is the transparency in what is the political outlook and what is the role they're trying to play in that space for Muslims?
And more specifically, like, well, what is there a connection with the Democratic Party? Is there some kind of bias or tendency to promote their candidates within the organization? And I think many Muslims want to understand that explicitly.
all right. Again, thanks for asking a very pertinent question. There were, and the numbers and data and the recordings and videos will tell you this too. There were 194 sessions in our convention this year. 194. Almost 160 plus speakers. You know how many political sessions were there out of these 194 sessions?
No, go ahead.
Only one session in which some of the politicians were involved. One session. 194 and 193 sessions were geared with other aspects of our community. This ratio itself starts what it is. Secondly, there is one thing I wanted to also clarify. Among all the organizations, and I don't want to comment on other organizations, but I want to comment about ICNA. If there is an organization in American Muslims whom you call the most conservative, who would stand on its ground, not to compromise on the basic principle of our religion, it is ICNA. 2000, you mentioned 2009-11. I was ICNA's Shura member in 2002. We had a convention in Cleveland, Ohio. You know how much was the attendance of that convention post 9/11? 1,500 people. There was a lot of people who were scared, worried, concerned. They did not show up for the convention. Just
for the listener, what's the typical number that?
Okay, yeah. It used to be much higher, several thousands.
Like 10,000?
We have grown so much this year. It was almost 25,000. Alhamdulillah.
Wow.
2001, 2002, Cleveland, 1,500. But that was July 4th weekend, Labor Day weekend. Come Labor Day weekend, 2 months from then, ISNA had a convention in Chicago, and they had 15,000 plus attendance. Now the question came to ICNA Shura, what is the problem? Why people did not come to ICNA? The answer many of us gave to ourselves, we are too conservative. We are too Islamic. And that may be the reason why people are worried and concerned to come to ICNA conventions. There was a debate, let's open up. Other organizations are doing, just let the hijab go away, let's go the restrictions on dressing, the type of speakers, the variety of entertainment, all that, let's just loosen it. Then we will have more people and we may be in less danger of being designated as the extremist. I was part of that Shura 20 years back. You know what ICNA Shura decided? ICNA Shura decided we will stick to our ground. Even if we have to close the conventions permanently, we will not compromise on that. We will stand what is right, what Quran and Sunnah tells us, and that is what ICNA did. And now you see the difference of all other conventions and ICNA conventions, 25,000 people. We just amazing number in attendance. So I think this is something which we have intentionally decided that we will continue to put an effort. As far as political activism is concerned, when all these organizations invite different political leaders, governors, this has been an ongoing thing. The two sides of the discussion argument, and I'm going to tell you both, which we had in our team also. We have one way of not inviting any political person in the convention. We have two sides here. One is Republican side and one is Democratic side. If we invite Republicans, almost all of them, actually each one of them, 100% oppose the Islamic phobia bill. Yeah, by default, they are all Islamophobic or supporting the Islamophobic actions. Their moral values, as far as they say, are better, but they support all the possible anti-Islamic elements in this country, outside the country. Then we have Democrats who come up, who stand up for many issues which are supportive of Islam and Muslims, but their moral values are just terrible, pathetic, unacceptable. So what to do? Not to invite them completely, or decide who to speak and help us. The disadvantage of not inviting, as you know, the Zionist, Hindutva, Hindu organizations, all those who are standing against Islam, the Islamophobic industry in this country, is several billion-dollar industry, and all these organizations are part of that. They invite these speakers, they invite the political leaders, and the invitation gives benefit to their community engagement.
Yeah.
Please finish. Let me finish, and it's just a few seconds.
Sure.
If we decide not to invite them, I'm not supporting this idea or that idea. I'm just giving you the two sides of the argument. If we do not invite them, we take away the advantage of our community being involved and getting the benefit from the policies and this country takes internationally in this. If we invite them, either we invite as an Islamophobic or we invite somebody who is morally and ethically not on the right grounds. What ICNA did, and this year and in the past, all these conventions had governors and other Islamic Muslim congressmen, women, all this. We had a very brief session. It was actually a very brief round table meeting which was supposed to happen between the Muslim people or candidates who won the election in local level, state level, international. It was a round table, a small session. Somehow at a certain point, just few hours before the session, we were told that one of the congresswomen, Sister Ilhan, was not able to make it. So we were told to change it, and somehow it just coincided with one of the main sessions. So she ended coming in a main session. So politically, as I said, there is no inclination to become political. We are a 501c3. We cannot be part of any political activism. Traditionally, Muslim organizations in their conventions have invited so many political leaders. ICNA tend to be very careful about that. The ratio of political people coming to our sessions versus all other sessions, 194 plus 1 or maybe 1.5 session, that tells the whole intent and the idea that where we stand on this area. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I'm going to try to give you, like, from the outside, like what we can see. So traditionally speaking, and I don't generally like to drop names or groups, but I just wanted to give some context here. Growing up, traditionally, we saw ICNA as an organization that was kind of lukewarm, right? It was just for the attendance. You know, you had politicians and non-Muslims coming to tell us about Islam, interfaith bridging, that kind of stuff. And they have their purpose. We traditionally viewed ICNA as an organization that was conservative, meaning that in our values, morals, and in alignment of what the mainstream, middle of the road, Muslim in America felt, right? Our cultural values, our religious values, our, spiritual alignments, all these things were kind of in line with what ICNA was as a group, right, was. I think where we have is, so we can break down the number of speakers and sessions versus the other sessions, which is fine. But I think where some of us feel a concern, and this is not only directed at ICNA, by the way. I think there's just a growing concern, though, that while we understand the need that there has to be some political engagement if you want to be an organization that represents Muslims, this is an understandable an effort that has to be made. I think we're concerned about the fact that even if it's one person that comes, right? And I do want to get a little bit more specific here in this case. It's like, for example, a person like Ilhan Omar, many people who are within our circles view her in a certain light, meaning that we're not questioning her Islam, but does her political career align largely against what Muslims stand for? And many of us feel that it's really not. Like, and the problem, I think we feel, the sort of the frustration is this. Yes, the organization may be largely conservative, but when there's a platform for someone who at times has mocked the Sharia, at times has, stood for values that are completely anti-Islamic, when that person is seen to be normalized, right, it may then begin to say that, hey, this is the politics that we are aligning with in America these days. Like, this is the way, and it's, I think, what I'm trying to get at, I'm not putting all the blame on ICNA. I think that this is a collective issue, but the issue here that I'm fearing is this. Now, at the bottom line is this. When we prop up figures like this who are political, now the Islamophobes and the people who are liberal in their views against Muslims, whether they be Muslims or non-Muslims, they use these individuals as a pedestal to say, look, this person wears hijab, this person has a beard, this person prays, this person is seen as an alim, and they have our views. So if you're against them, then you must be against mainstream Islam, and you might be an extremist. And we know how that rhetoric goes, right? In the future, that, hey, I think one of the beautiful things about being a Muslim is that we can make that line, draw that line in the sand and say, this is our way and this is your way. And I think a lot of times we viewed ICNA as one of those organizations that were uncompromising in that regards, meaning that, you know what, hey, we understand the time and place we live in, but there's certain things that we won't do and we cannot do, even though it may seem to be beneficial in the short term, like, and then but because of our principles and our Islamic nature, we're not going to do that. And I think some people feel that ICNA right now is kind of blurring that line, meaning because it's just, either it's for numbers or for get more attention or to get more exposure, which is all understandable.
Of course, succumbing to pressure.
Right. And I think that's really where the concern is. Like, where do we see ICNA in the future? Is it going to turn into another ISNA? Is it going to be like, are we going to be, simply platforming people because it's for exposure? Are we going, what is the basis on how we platform people? And just on a side note too, it's not just the non-Muslim or it's not just the politician. There are sometimes organizations that are also, there's a lot of benefit from, but they're also invited to speak there. But they also have their agenda as well too, right? And so kind of taking all that into consideration, it makes some of us concerned as to not only where ICNA is heading, but where are we as a Muslim body and ummah in America heading, as an ummah here, like as a nation. What is our path forward?
So I'm really glad this discussion is happening, because this is the first time I'm given the opportunity to talk about this. Sheikh Yasir Khadi was asked this question. He answered, but not on behalf of ICNA. I disagree with his answer, what he said. I also disagree with many other people who would just sit on a YouTube channel and give a long lecture about ICNA and talk a lot about ICNA, how ICNA is doing this. So do you think, you said two words, I'm going to repeat them. One, ICNA is normalizing the actions of somebody or the opinions. I wish and I hope I can share that clip. Actually, I'm the one who spoke just before her when she was invited to the stage. Go and listen that 1 minute clip. What I said. Anyone of you have heard that?
I think I came across it a while ago. Yeah, I did.
The person who shared that actually in one of the YouTube videos was conveniently took off the part which should have been in the session, in that clip. I said in plain, clear words before she was coming to the stage that she did some brave things about Modi and
Palestine.
President Trump.
Yeah.
At the same time, ICNA stands for morality. ICNA stands for justice. ICNA stands for the ahkam and guidelines of Quran and Sunnah. And all those things, immoral things which people are trying to make it acceptable in our society, ICNA stands against them. Absolute clear words. And then she came, and the way I spoke, she commented, coming up, you sounded very angry on this issue. I said, yes, I am. And I wanted all the audience, 25,000 people, to get this message, what ICNA stands for. Out of those, and one thing you said, ICNA is going into that blurry. Where is that blurriness? We had 194 sessions, 3 days of convention, full of spiritual Quran, Islamic learning. How many people know, including 3 of you, that ICNA actually had several sessions during that convention on education against LGBT and moral values? We had several sessions from some of the best of the scholars to educate our community that how much ICNA wants to promote, how in the world, and just put everything together. An organization. I started working for Islamic movement in 1981. Many of people were not even born then. 42 years of my life, I have not spent a single day without working for the cause of Islam because of the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just met a group of 7 individuals whom we honored in their late 80s. They are working day in and day out in late 80s for 60 plus years to spread the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this country. How in the world an organization who did not compromise after 9/11 to change or open up our doors for any liberal or secular values would accept a 15-minute session to destroy our identity? They forget that what ICNA does all year long. They forget the whole Quran and Hadith and fiqh and the knowledge of Islam, the youth sessions of 10,000 youth, everything which happened in that convention in those 200 sessions, and they just talk about 15 minutes. So it was a strategical decision from some of our brothers that we will invite a politician. At the end of the day, when this discussion happened, as Amir of ICNA and President of ICNA, I asked our own membership that was that a good decision or right, wrong decision, right? Decisions can be, when you do a shura, sometimes we may end up making a wrong decision. Mm-hmm. But how in the world that will take away 50 years of blood and sweat of our work for the deen of Islam in this country? How will it take away the work which ICNA does? I was in Pakistan taking care of flood 2 months back, and my whole team is working in 54 different countries, taking care of the refugees in Jordan, in Lebanon. Nobody cares in the Abu Barajana Palestinian camp anymore, since they are living for 2 generations. But ICNA is the whole world, wherever our Muslim brothers are in need, we do whatever we can. Nobody even knows many things. We work in 650 cities only in USA to help our brothers who are in need during COVID. These 26 shelters home, no other Muslim organization has a place for Muslim sisters where can they live a life as a Muslim woman in a shelter home. All this hard work, all this work which ICNA does is not of value of a 15-minute session, which I said there was a disagreement, even ICNA members, whether it was the right decision or wrong. Just put the whole picture together.
Yeah, brother, Dr. Muhsin, you're 100% right. And people such as myself, we see ICNA so much more, or it's much more closer to our hearts because it's the last stronghold. Some of the other larger Muslim organizations have already kind of, they're in the business of accumulating large audiences, and they're very compromising towards, secular Western values. And for us, ICNA is much more closer to our hearts. And if someone like, Ilhan Omar comes on stage, you guys invite her, it hurts us disproportionately more, even though you're what you're saying is 100% right. It's like all the amazing things that ICNA does gets overlooked because of that one moment, right? And it's a human being fault, that they look at that one fault. If we see it as podcasters, YouTubers, if we make one mistake, our audience is going to be, disproportionately against us, and we'll be like, what about our body of work that we've done? We may have made a mistake here or there, but look at the body of work, what we're doing. We'll own up to it, and it's amazing, and it speaks to your your honesty that you're able to tell us that that may have been a mistake inviting her on, and that look at the body of work that we've done. And it's true, your body of work is why we kind of prefaced this discussion earlier on by talking about the body of work that ICNA has done. And
yeah, I think that, to be honest, I do agree with this one, what you guys are saying, that the purpose of this is not to cancel anybody, right? To cancel, I don't believe like someone is irredeemable in Islam, right? We will make mistakes as individuals, and we will make mistakes as a collective, as an organization. And I'm happy to hear that there was pushback on whether this political candidate should have come or not come, which is a good sign that there's pushback. It's not something that is just equally just a value push forward. And like Sim said, I think it hits closer to us because we viewed it as I mentioned, it was a conservative wing of the conferences that we had left, right? And I know there are other organizations that are coming up now, but they're nowhere near in size and operation that ICNA has, and the legacy it's had in America. But I think what the audience and a lot of people who are rational minded in this, who don't have an agenda, who are just simply Muslims that have conservative persuasions, I think the transparency would help. Right, meaning that, hey, this is not something that we normally do. And we will reconsider, bringing on politicians, especially since right now the only politicians we can bring are the left-leaning ones that unfortunately just don't align. And I think like having those conversations about, just publicly when you're given the opportunity to, like here, would go like lengths to kind of bridge that gap, because many of us don't see the legwork. Right, we just see ICNA as a conference that happens a couple times a year. It's the Muslim Students Association, and then there's the other little conferences, but they don't see the larger picture, like the shelters, the donations, the food campaigns, just the refugee things. They don't see all the other programs that are involved here, and I think I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, and I'm glad that you said that it was something that you questioned the shura on and said, hey, was this a valuable decision? And I guess what I would like to hear before we go on from here is this something, does the leadership at the ICNA camp, do they feel that this was something that might have been miscalculated, or are we just taking this out of proportion? I mean, do they feel that there's a disconnect between us in this regards and what the leadership thinks, or are they understanding where we're coming from?
Great question.
All right. So the issue is, as I mentioned, when we make a decision, as you can imagine, a convention where 25,000 people are coming and 200 sessions are going to happen, 200 speakers are coming. You can imagine the detailed work is needed to run a convention. By the way, since May 2022, as of today, ICNA had 6 other events within, I'm just telling you how the community, alhamdulillah, this is blessing of Allah. We don't take any credit for this. Since convention, ICNA has had 6 other events. 6. You know how many people have attended those 6 events in USA? 105,000 people have attended 6 events after convention. That shows the trust this Muslim community has given to it and helping it. So during that time, and I'm glad that actually I'm going to answer your question by asking your question. Who gave the opportunity to ICNA and its leadership to answer this question? This is the first time you invited me. I said, yes, I'm coming. And I wanted this question to be asked. This question was asked there were two group of people. One who sincerely thought, as you mentioned, with the bottom of your heart, you felt hurt. And there is a group of scholars who wrote a letter to Amir of ICNA. And they said, brother, we are concerned that what ICNA did, please talk to us. I called them same day, a group of big scholars, mashallah, learned ones. We had detailed discussion and continued to have that discussion. And alhamdulillah, they were satisfied. And they said the exact same words, which you mentioned, that ICNA is probably the last hope because of all the work and the decisions we have taken to protect we are servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing more than that, nothing. And that is the goal we have tried to achieve. We are going to save our families and the Muslim families from the miseries of hellfire by doing everything which we could. So that group of scholars, but there was another group who just went on YouTube, on podcast, and start blaming and just talking about, I wish, come and attend that prayer, 15,000 hijabi sisters and brothers and the Qiyamul Lails and the whole environment. You will never say that.
Yeah. What is your response to them now that they will not share the stage with any, irrespective of ICNA or any other conference, that they do not want to be at that conference? I'm not going to mention any names, but notable personalities in the YouTube space have said if any future organization invites some of these political leaders in the West on their platform, that they will not share the stage. Do you think that is the correct move to make, that you understand where they're coming from?
So this is their decision.
Do you agree with it though?
No, I don't want to say what is the behind. We try to explain them as I explained it to you, right? And whenever I have seen, invariably, whenever we have tried to explain the reasons and the whole context, people have generally agreed with us that yes, you did your evaluation and you will take the decisions because we see the whole picture of it. And in future also, we will stay with the guidelines of Islam. We do not support Democratic Party. How can we, with the values they have?
Yeah.
We do not support the Republican Party the way they are Islam.
Yeah.
So we, being the largest Muslim organization, actually there is a group of and just to add to this point, not because of few of the YouTubers or video makers and so forth who just started going after ICNA without even attending an ICNA conference, knowing what we have done. Because of our own process of ihtisab and mushawarat and evaluation, we started the process, how will we improve this? We contacted all the scholars, particularly on these moral grounds, on LGBT issues and so forth. As I said, we had several sessions in that convention to educate. You know what? Since then, we have talked to a huge group of scholars. ICNA has gone to them. And we have asked the scholars, please answer us. Please help us. Should we not invite them at all? Or if we do, what should be the criteria? How will we do that? That's one part. The second part, this convention, coming convention, as I said, it takes a whole year of preparation. You will see a whole day dedicated from the top-notch scholars only on morality and LGBT issues and others to educate our brothers and sisters and our youth on this issue, on issues like moral grounds. And since 2000 convention, as I said, we had 6 different events, 2 conventions, 2 regional conventions, one in Houston and one in New York, actually 3 in Atlanta, 3 conventions. In all conventions, we had the topics and we did not invite the politicians. We had the topics to educate our youth to deal with this dilemma, because it is a challenge and we see it, and ICNA is ready to take that challenge. We are ready to help, get the help from our scholars, we will never succumb, we will never get defeated by any morality. And we have no problem saying what is wrong, wrong. And we make this dua, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ahu wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinab.
Dr. Muhsin, can you unequivocally and clearly say that Ilhan Omar will no longer be invited to future ICNA conventions? Can you give that to our audience today? That assurance.
Until she changes. If she changes.
Unless she changes and she makes tawbah, inshallah. We should always offer that. No, we shouldn't joke about that, inshallah. That,
no, I mean,
you know,
if she changes, then I mean, what I'm saying is that no one's irredeemable, right? So perhaps in the future she may change her position. I'm saying as she is currently in her current political form, I think we're looking, and I know it kind of sounds funny, but I think people are saying, not just her herself, but individuals that are like her as well, right? Where we don't want to see them in a space where, because a lot of time, I'll tell you the reason for this question, doctor, because a lot of us are engaged in dawah, and we speak to people, and we're making dawah, and we have to confront, and when people, they will tend to use them as examples and say, look, well, you have this person, you have that person, right? And it becomes very difficult for us to say, okay, we are Muslims in America, we're fully American, we're fully Muslim, and we are going to maintain our values and structures, right? And when people like this are invited, it becomes more challenging. So I think what we're looking for is say, hey, if people are espousing views that are anti-Sharia or anti our moral, our moral principles, I think it's fair enough to say, hey, can we request that an organization not invite these individuals to speak, especially in a conference that we view as something for conservative, normal, Orthodox Muslims.
Yeah, especially, and it's not just Ilhan Omar, it's Rashida Tlaib, Keith Ellison. They've all been saying, Linda Sarsour, values that are contradictory to mainstream Islamic beliefs. And, they're participating with many groups and alliances that are directly in contradiction with their Islamic identity. And that their representations of, or their expressions of Islam are being conflated with liberal values, and that's just not true, and it's creating mixed messages towards the West and what we're all about. We as Muslims are completely independent. I mean, we know from the example of the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca, he was in a similar position, that if you could divide the Quraysh into two camps, one was one who wanted to punish the Muslims, they want to deal with them harshly, and then there was the camp of Quraysh who wanted to work alongside with them and compromise, and the Prophet ﷺ rejected both of them. And that's our position on this podcast, that we as Muslims in the West, we have to have our own initiative. We lead the way instead of wanting to be led by any other political party,
or getting support,
or getting support from the Republicans or the Democrats, or any kind of progressive groups that are representing minorities, and we cast aside any of these slogans that many people throw our way, where they say, if you're not at the table, then you're what's for dinner. They kind of toss these kind of one size fits all ways to get you to compromise on your religion. And if you can imagine how our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would have dealt with questions like that, he would have said, okay, I'll rather be eaten than compromise our values. How could we allow ourselves to come to this point where we're wondering whether our Islam is too much for audiences, maybe we're too religious, and we need to become more compatible with our audience to gain more numbers? And I think these are some questions that you're dealing with, but I would like to understand a little bit more about your thinking in the future sense, and how ICNA is going to be attracting audiences. One thing I want to commend you guys about is you guys have reached out to popular YouTubers and people who are traditional minded, and invited them on, people who have large audiences. And I think that's one way to increase your exposure among the youth and just Muslims in general.
Right. So as I said in the beginning, and I hope, because I don't know how much time I have. I would like to talk a little bit more about ICNA and our basic principle. But just to answering this question, ICNA, as when I gave you the example in post 9/11, ICNA decided that we will not even have a convention if we have to compromise on our value. We are okay with that. That decision itself is the answer of your many questions. That we will not compromise on any values, any principles which are against Islam, which on the Islamic principles, on the ahkam of Quran, on the ahkam of Sharia. Many of you saw the speaker's line. Why did anybody notice that Sister Linda was not invited to this convention?
That's true.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
See, why? Because she was, the discussion, and people can disagree with that. The discussion was that a person who comes as a person of a preacher, as a person of spiritual uplifting, as a Muslim leadership, and talks in that capacity and has values which contradict the basic principles of Islam. The argument otherwise, and again, I'm not going to go in detail of supporting or disagreeing with that. The other one was that is a political person, and we will say before her speech that how much we disagree with you, very clearly, present her political value. She was not a speaker as a speaker for Islam. She didn't talk about Islam at all. She talked about the positive things she has done. She was invited as a speaker, not as one of the spiritual leaders. So give the credit of ICNA for taking some bold decisions also. And we will continue to take those bold decisions.
Alhamdulillah, we're glad to hear that. I mean, no, it's a good thing because it shows the line that we're talking about, right? Because as much as and don't get me wrong, I understand the other side's position that, we live in this world, we need to have representation, so forth and so on. I understand that. But there's a time and place for certain things, and there's a time and place for what our core values as Muslims, right? And we, again, like I said, I keep coming back to this understanding that we kind of view ICNA conventions as a safe haven for Muslims, right? Where we can get together like-minded individuals who share this desire to live the best way we can as Muslims in an environment where it is not the most Islamic. And so we're trying to guard that as much as we can. So the fact that you mentioned that, see, for many of us, I didn't know this. I didn't know the reason why Linda Sarsour was not invited. But me learning the reason now helps reassure that some of these values are still being implemented, right? And I think the more of that the audience hears, the less of the gap in what ICNA's
for sure
goal becomes, right? Because it's narrowing that gap. Because now we know, oh, cool, ICNA feels the way I do, or ICNA feels the way I do about Linda Sarsour. Like, we're cool, we're on the same page. And I think in that regard, that's kind of why Sim just asked you, hey, what is the position now about politicians or figures like Ilhan Omar? Forget about even politicians or not, figures like Ilhan Omar. Is it going to be the policy now going forward, based on the lessons that we've learned in hindsight, that ICNA will no longer, kind of bring these individuals that cause these kind of confusions among the community?
Yeah, and I sympathize with a lot of the decision makers, because many of these things are difficult to follow. Many of the the dances that Ilhan Omar was doing with the with certain communities within the West, unless you're following this very closely, you don't know about this. So this is happening on some tweet that went out, and it takes a sharp eye to keep track of all these things. And I know some people will ignore that. And they'll in the different organizations, they'll ignore it, and they'll say, oh, well, you know what, she's doing what she has to do, she's a politician, and they'll make some excuse, But as far as Muslims are concerned, we don't, that's not our thinking. We have a some principles that we want to maintain, and we don't want to sacrifice our identity, because we want 100 years down the line, we want to see our children's children still practicing our faith, So
I just wanted to add two things, and hopefully we can move on.
Yeah.
A couple of things I want to mention. One, the question is out to a large group of scholars. We are in contact with them, and we have been getting in advices, and we have asked them the same question. And let's wait.
Okay.
Let's see what a group of scholars.
And we asked your listeners, we want to know which scholars you're talking to as well. Like in terms of like if it's a group of scholars, at least that way we know, like, because scholars can vary on the spectrum as well in terms of their standards and some because some organizations, I want to make this clear, because some organizations will say, oh, you know what, so and so scholar said that it's okay, and they'll legitimize whatever decision that they want to make, and they're not necessarily reflective of what the main body or they may have made. I'm going to be lenient, and I'll say they may have made some kind of ijtihad on a certain issue, and they say, but that could be an outlier.
This is a group of scholars which contacted us showing their concern.
Okay.
So I think that's
Okay.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
So I hope that answers. Now, a couple of things I also wanted to mention getting this opportunity. And as I said, this is the first time an ICNA Amir is asked question about ICNA. Everybody else was answering ICNA's position other than ICNA. So I tried to explain it. Now, what ICNA stands for? ICNA is a one-stop shop. I think this is very important for your viewers to remember. And inshallah, they know. Attending 100,000 people more in 6 months in different conventions shows the trust. I was in Pakistan 2 months back. I'm just giving you an example. When the flood came, I was actually in Jordan taking care of refugee camps. I am an ICNA president. The whole ICNA leadership in this environment of so much commercialization, these celebrity scholars and YouTube, it's very easy to give lectures. And it's very difficult to be on the ground and deal with the practical issues in the community as a grassroots organization, and deal with the issues and answer the questions. So when I was in Jordan and Lebanon taking care of our refugees through our helping hand, we got the message in Pakistan that there's a huge flood. Me and Javed Siddiqui, who is the CEO of Helping Hand, we went to Pakistan. We saw the condition, and you all know how devastating it was. We made a pledge, which was like very unusual and unrealistic. That day when we were in Pakistan, US government pledged $10 million, Canadian government pledged $5 million, later France government pledged $10 million. You know how much ICNA pledged? $15 million in Pakistan. Wow. We came back. Brothers and sisters, within 2 months, this community, US-based Muslim American community, donated us more than $15 million already. And that is the trust people have on our amana, on our work. This one-stop shop of ICNA, that every 9 minutes, there's a Quran being sent to a non-Muslim household from ICNA, from our Dawah department, from Gain Peace and Islam. 26 shelter homes in this country for those Muslim sisters who are left alone, are widows, either they have families and they have no place to go where they can practice their religion, eat halal food. No other organization does. This organization, our membership started, what is the lowest age for our membership? We have an organization called MCNA, Muslim Children of North America. ICNA's membership started at 5 years of age, 5. And the oldest member we had is 100 years of age. So right from 5 years till 100 years of age, we got covered, everybody, alhamdulillah. Sisters, brothers, YM youth, sisters, brothers, Dawah department, ILF, brother just talked about either, providing them the basic education and knowledge of Islam. This department of ours, which is called Amirs, it's a unique department. All the Muslim brothers and sisters who accept Islam, it was a huge need. They felt very ajnabi. They felt that they were out of place in a Muslim community, sometimes immigrants, sometimes different brothers who are Muslims forever. We created this department, invested huge amount of money to support, help them so they can stay Muslims, provide them all the support, necessary support. So CSJ, our department which helps for the social justice. So this one stop ICNA shop, basically, Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum, providing each member of Muslim family living in this country to obey the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen through aqamat deen, establishment of the deen. We have never shied away to say this in our bylaws and in our speeches, and our goal, establishing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on ourselves, on our families, on our communities, and to see that we all, as a Muslim, as Muslim ICNA family, and as Muslim Ummah family, we do whatever we could do to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the place where we live.
That's it. I mean, that's, I think, what many Muslims wanted to hear from you, at least from where we're headed as a Muslim organization that is the leading Muslim organization, the largest Muslim organization in the West. And I think you've inspired a great deal of confidence within us with your assurances and your examples that you've provided in assuring that ICNA remains something that Muslims can have confidence in. And I think there's a lot to think about from that perspective. But at least as far as the future goes, how the main question still is left to be grappled with relating to how an organization, Muslim organizations in general, remain relevant in this time where most of our children are on social media or they're on video games or what have you. They have so many distractions, and we have another problem as well where we have many people wanting to be the chief, and very few people want to actually do the groundwork. They want we need foot soldiers in kitchens where we're feeding homeless people or we're doing other grassroots activities. We don't have enough people contributing because too many people want to lead an organization rather than work for one, So at least as far as that is concerned, in terms of an organization maintaining its strength and relevance within the Muslim communities in the West, how do you plan on overcoming those challenges?
Yes, Jazakallah khair. ICNA has seen, we have a department we made it 2 years back, 2030 vision. That means ICNA and that department meets every single weekend for last 3 years. And the goal is to see every 23, 24, 25 and until 2030. What are the challenges? What are the goals? What are the objectives? And what is the way forward in each area of our work, which may include political activity, which may include the social services, which may include the basic Islamic knowledge, which also include the challenges we face. And that is the reason our 5-year-olds have something, ICNA has something for the 5-year-olds, and ICNA has something for 100-year-olds. I don't know how many of you know, during this month of Ramadan and throughout the year, ICNA Sisters Division runs these Quran halaqat, and many occasions I have seen it. sometimes 2 or 3,000 sisters in USA are part of those Quran halaqas. And it runs all year long and also during the month of Ramadan. So we have tried to identify all of us, ICNA's whole leadership, myself, 10 vice presidents, our secretary general, 6 assistant secretaries, all of them are volunteers. We are not a commercial organization. We don't earn any money from this work, and we don't want to. We want to make it sure we are low profile people. We are not celebrity scholars. We don't want to. We don't want to be commercializing and making this more of a different way, a YouTube or social media. We want to do the grassroots groundwork. And that is where we see ICNA doing the great work, inshallah. We need the du'as.
Yeah.
We need the help. One of the Salaf said, and I just want to remind you, that if a Muslim brother comes to me and his whole body stinks alcohol, he has alcohol on his shirt and everywhere else, my feeling about that Muslim brother will be, I will say, an alcoholic got mad and threw alcohol on him, my brother would have never done it. If a person stands on the mountain top and claims, I'm God, I'm Allah, I will say, my brother is quoting an ayah from Quran, not claiming to be a God. This level of trust on our brothers and husn zan is very important in this social media time. The easiest way to bohtan and ghiba is social media resources.
Yeah.
It's very important.
How are you looking at the new challenges that are being presented to conferences such as yours from some feminist type groups where they say that you guys don't have an equal amount of representation of women on speaker panels? At least from our perspective, we're not attacking you with this. We get challenged with the same thing. Like, oh, you guys are 3 brown brothers. You don't have enough representation within your hosts. We're just 3 guys who grew up together, and we start. There was no like thought behind.
There's no coordination. We have to have 3 specific brown people.
we this is just the way things worked out, and this is the chemistry between us that. I'm sorry. I wish I could paint my face into some color that you would find acceptable. Whoever you are who's upset with my color, but I can't change that. I wish I could. If that would make you happy, if I could make everyone happy, we could make each one of us a different color person, but it's just not possible. And then so organizations such as yours are being presented with these challenges where you're not giving women enough speaking time, and we get the same question. So I was wondering how you want to respond to that claim.
So we share the same challenges.
Yeah.
I would say. But you know what? The barakah of following the guidelines of Quran is very special. You just do what is right.
Exactly.
And the guidelines given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is enough for us to follow. And then you will see the barakah. And you will see the support. There will be people who will continue to criticize. We have to see at-taqwa hahuna, looking into our hearts and looking and evaluating, making sure every night when we go to bed, our bed, we do self-ihtisab. We do our ICNA is run on the basis of shura and mushawara. We try our best. We are humans. We have made mistakes. We may still make mistakes, but our intentions are very clear. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every single time. Those 7 individuals who are in their 90s, many of them actually, I was hoping somebody will show their pictures. Many of them are PhD scholars. They are highly educated. They spend their youth, they sacrifice their careers, their good family time to see what we see today in our society.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry.
My-
I'm not. Since you mentioned something about you've mentioned this frequently about the shura. I'm just curious, and I think maybe some other listeners may also be curious. How is the shura chosen for ICNA? I mean, just as a general idea, I want to know: is it a lifelong appointment? Is it like a voting? Like, how does it happen?
Yeah, we follow the Sunnah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and everything. So there is a process of it's probably one of the most democratic organization you can imagine. There's an election process. So the core membership of ICNA votes for the Shura, votes for the Amir. There's a term limit, both for all our. So these individuals, actually, the picture before that, me and Naeem Bhai, myself as the current Amir and Naeem Bhai as the previous Amir, standing behind 7 those great individuals who are in their late 80s who work for ICNA. So the election process is very simple. Yeah, this is the picture of many of them are PhDs and highly educated, spend all their life. The person in the middle, Dr. Talat Sultan, is one of the founding members. He's the founder of MSA. He's one of the founding member of ISNA, and he is the founder of ICNA.
When you say MSA, you mean like Muslim Student Association in the universities?
Yes, he is the founder of MSA. This guy in blue and white sweater in between. He's so old, but he's so precious.
MashaAllah.
And he is affiliated with Islamic organization for 66 years. He spent every single minute of his life. That's why we are just standing behind, trying to follow their footsteps.
May Allah increase
So-
them, I mean.
So the answer to your question, there's an election process, 2-year terms. An Amir can stay maximum of 4 years in one consecutive time. Similar Shura members. All ICNA positions are elected by its membership. And so this is the process. Very few, and that actually brings lots of new people because of the term limits. Currently, ICNA, I'm glad you mentioned about diversity and different groups coming. I think out of 24 members, 3 are sisters. 6 members are youth from YM ranks. We have the largest YM youth organization in the country under the name of YM. And rest of them are from different backgrounds. So this is our Shura, and we meet every single month, and if needed, even more frequently. Our Secretary General, mashallah, is just one of the most amazing guys you can ever meet. Brother Nan Tafsir, he's a high rank official in American Airlines, but whatever he has, he gives to ICNA, mashallah.
MashaAllah. So hypothetically, could I like nominate Sim to be like a member of the board, and then take a vote on it?
I say no.
Yeah, but we don't know means yes,
But
actually.
you have to
Yeah.
plead
You have to
me.
pull me
You have to
back.
pull me
Yeah.
back. You
Yeah,
have to.
pull you
I'll
back.
say no for the first 10 times.
No, I mean it's interesting, and the reason why I asked it is because most individuals don't really know how organizations are run. The amount of experience that the closest thing we have is probably your local masjid board, right? And sometimes
What the
people
general public
think
thinks,
that is the standard for all organizations, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, a lot of times people have issues in their own communities, especially in the masajids, with regards to how long people are on the board, right? And how, you know, how they're chosen and what, you know, these kinds of things. So I wanted to ask that question just to clarify for people that were listening. You know, I'm just thinking about this conversation and to be, I think most of the audience is not familiar with what ICNA does, besides just having a conference. And I think this conversation does open eyes about, you know, looking beyond some of the shortcomings that ICNA may have, provided, like you said, as long as that there's a learning experience, right? Like, because we can't expect any organization to be perfect and to be blame-free or without any faults. It's going to happen. I think what majority of people, like, you know, from from our persuasion are probably looking to find is, hey, you know what, there's an organization that can recognize a particular blunder and then, correct it based on the Quran and Sunnah. Meaning that, hey, you know what, that was a mistake. We're going to go forward. We learn from that. But our main objective, our main key goal is to, live by the Quran and Sunnah and to share that with Muslims and non-Muslims. And I think so far in this conversation, I think we were able to kind of get an idea of what ICNA's position is on these issues. I was just reading through some of the chats, and there are people in support and obviously who are angry at certain issues. I did come across a very a pertinent comment from a dear brother of ours, Imam Dawood Walid, and he made a very good point. And he says that anyone that tries to take a position that is against any clear ayah of the Quran or a mutawatir hadith should never be platformed. And I think, in other words, he said it more eloquently, but I'm saying that maybe, I don't know if this is within the bylaws or within the policies of ICNA, but maybe having something like that published forward for people to see and to be aware of might be something that would kind of ease the tension, right? To say, hey, you know what, we as Muslims unequivocally, for example, we don't stand with the LGBTQ. We recognize that we are different and we don't view this as a halal lifestyle. We are against, certain things like, whatever it may be, or anyone that would take a position against the clear ayat of the Quran and the hadith, which are sound and sahih, right? And I think something like that, as basic as it may sound, because like I said, you're an organization that has, decades upon decades of experience, with people who are familiar with your background may think that this is something obvious, right? But many of the younger generation, many people who are confused, sometimes they miss the obvious, right? So maybe just an advice, maybe it might be something that could be, incorporated into a message that is then put out to the public, so it's transparent for everyone to see what ICNA's position is.
Okay, so Jazakallah khair, good suggestion. And obviously, this is when a new speaker name comes, we have a whole process of vetting that person, and vetting criteria is very strict. That includes this part, but inshallah, I'm going to convey. It sounds like a very good suggestion. Although, if you see all the oaths, the bylaws, everything includes Quran and Sunnah and guideline of Quran and Sunnah under ICNA. There's one question which came to me actually somebody also told me to tell me something about myself. I didn't, I think, tell yet. I'm a physician. I'm an ICU doctor. I'm trained as a neonatologist, pediatrics doctor. I am also a faculty at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. I teach medical students.
Oh, mashallah. So you're a real doctor. I thought sometimes the organizations just have doctor next to the
Like a PhD or
yeah, you just PhD, like
or,
a doc,
or
a
an
PhD
acupuncture
in marine
specialist.
psychology,
Oh my
right?
God, guys, let him finish. Guys, let him finish. Go ahead.
No, we're happy. I'm happy, but she's a real doctor.
Yeah, a real doctor. I have, alhamdulillah, my wife, my 5 sons. Each one of my family member is part of Islamic work. Alhamdulillah, it's a blessing of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And it's just an effort, humble effort that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala accept from me and my family.
Yeah, if I can just say something. So look, I think one thing that's very, very important is that and this is a great lesson learned, I think, for everybody, is if you have an issue or some contention, you have to go to the one responsible, right? That's the first thing, the one who's in charge, like the Amir. What generally happens is you have an organization, you have an Amir, and then you have some of the people on the ground, because they're not as well experienced. Whatever they do, people associate with the entire group, right? And this happens everywhere. This is a human thing, unfortunately. And you've probably, obviously, you know this very well because you have to deal with this probably on a daily basis. So I think that's the first thing. The other is that the wisdom of speaking to the one responsible, the Amir, is an obligation, I think, on those individuals who have an issue. If we have an issue, I think it's a great thing that this was put together because it gives us a whole different level. I think everybody generally knows how active ICNA is, especially in the West, but we don't know how detailed it is, which you depicted for us, and we would actually never imagine. This is me speaking. I'm not going to speak for you guys. I didn't know that the Emir physically goes to these places and is spread thin with going to different countries as far as flooding is concerned and refugee. This is an amazing thing to know, because it's a sign of a true leader, right? And I'm not saying this to get any type of brownie points. I'm just speaking from my heart, right?
You're not blowing smoke up.
I'm not blowing smoke. I'm literally, this is exactly how I feel. And I think this is something that people need to hear, and they needed to hear, is that the people who are actually up top, what are they actually busy with? What are they doing other than organizational stuff? And even if they were just busy with organizational stuff and delegating, that's fine. But if they're actually in the forefront of many of these things and risking their security and their lives and their family, this is something very, very amazing. What ends up happening now is, I don't want to come full circle. I don't want to come back to this Ilhan Omar thing, but just from my observation, what ends up happening is that when an organization which is as large as ICNA and has many branches like ICNA Relief and ILF and YM and all these robust organizations, when it comes time to a conference, people usually see that as, okay, this is all the cumulative efforts that happen throughout the year. We're going to see all of this at a conference. So this is the time for this organization to shine. That's in essence what a conference is, right? And obviously bringing people together, right? What ends up happening is, when a political candidate comes in, which their lifestyle and what they're promoting is contradictory to Islam, the onlooker, I'm not talking about the organization, but the person who's from the outside of the bubble, they see it as, man, these people are doing so much work, but they don't have any aptitude, they don't have any know-how of how politics works, because they would never invite her in the first place. Yeah. So for them, it's like, man, they're doing so much awesome work, and we love all the work they do, but even they have been steered by this political atmosphere now. So to the average Muslim, like between the age of, let's say, like 18 and 40, and even from amongst them, which is somewhat of a minority of how much people actually are involved in Islamic work, it's actually a very, very tiny minority, right? It's not even just a minority. It's an unfair minority. To those individuals who are boots on the ground doing Islamic work, to them, it looks as if we've basically become very naive and we've succumbed to a pressure. Now, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying that's if we were to look at the general bird's eye view of how people think and how people understand these things, right? Yeah. So what ends up happening is that they feel that this was the conference, this is what happened, this is their time to shine, and how dare they have the audacity? I'm saying this because I've heard people say this, and this is something that went through my heart too, Doctor. I'm not going to sugarcoat. This is something that happened to me individually. Is that I came to a conclusion based off of what happened with that invite, is that, you know what, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to continue his deen however he wants, and people in great organizations have fallen and they continue to fall, and they have just either, and this was my insight, is that they're fumbling so much with what scrutiny is going to happen with Muslim organizations for not inviting people from the left or the extreme left, that they're majboor now, they have to do this. This was my mindset, right? It wasn't like, oh my God, ICNA, there are a whole bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. They're completely fallen. They've sold out. That wasn't my idea. And I think many people share the sentiment is, and I think for the most part, alhamdulillah, I think you've changed our paradigm, or my paradigm on that, because of this beautiful conversation. But a majority of people are of the giving up hope, almost nihilistic view of Islam for this temporary phase that we're living in, is that, oh, we have to invite these people now because from an organizational perspective, yeah, is that the organization is actually put under a lot of pressure now, and they have to do this in order to be relevant or not to be considered somebody who's an extremist organization, because it can really easily happen. Yeah. Right. So, but I think one of the most fruitful things that we did, obviously in 2023, because it's only been a few days, is I actually have the ICNA president on, and I think it was Siraj, what was his name? I think Brother Wahaj. I always call him Siraj. Wahaj actually kind of gave us this idea, right?
Yeah.
He actually, so hats off to him. He's a great brother. And I'm actually very happy this conversation happened because we're able to see boots on the ground, that even the president is boots on the ground, right? And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Dr. Muhsin Wahaj was one of my students when I was teaching Sunday school. When I kind of got out of the activism thing when I was in my early 20s, and I started teaching Sunday school, and I told Mort, hey, Mort, start teaching Sunday school with me. And me and him used to go every Sunday, and we had to deal with him. And he was a little troublemaker back then, and I'm so glad he turned out with you guys and doing important work with you guys. And much love to Wahaj for thinking about us and connecting us together so we could have this fruitful conversation, inshallah.
So inshallah, can just I don't know how long, because I think I have to offer my break, a few minutes left.
Yeah.
But can we just have that pic of? I just wanted to give the glimpse of that picture of Salat during convention.
Yeah. I have it right here. One second.
It's just.
It was such an engaging conversation. I didn't get to go through all these pictures, but.
The other one. Here,
yeah, let's see here.
Okay. Is any other one?
There is. Hang on. No, I don't know why it's not scrolling.
It just every time I see it,
it gives goosebumps. I saw that. Yeah, it was a huge.
Me that this is what ICNA is all about, and this is what we do in our conventions, and this whole idea of bringing people together. You know, we had two more conventions after this main convention, regional convention. First convention ever in New Jersey and then in Houston. Both of them were sold out. We actually had much more attendance than what we expected. Yeah, look at this. This is just Allah, amazing, everybody. This is our goal. Make everybody to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what ICNA is all about, inshallah.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I just think that, you know, sometimes as people who are involved in dawah and da'is, du'at in general, and just calling to Islam and just reflecting on your own position, sometimes, you know, I'm speaking about myself here, we sometimes get caught up in the numbers, meaning quantity over quality, right? And sometimes that can be, and this is not directed towards ICNA. I think any Muslim organization or podcast or whatever it may be, like sometimes even for to make it more relevant, on our thing, we're thinking, oh, you know what? There are some shows out there that have 100,000 views or 200,000 views, and then you start looking and asking yourself, is it about the views? Is it about the numbers, or is it about the quality? And sometimes, you know, you're willing to sacrifice the numbers and the quantity for the better quality. And so I think, you know, no matter if that was a row of one row of 10 people, or if that was, you know, 100, I you know, as long as those people are benefiting and they're deriving some benefit from the conference in Islam, I think at the end of the day, that is going to be what we will be accounted for, right? Meaning that Allah is not going to ask us about the numbers. He's going to ask us about our effort. And so I do appreciate it in that sense. You know, alhamdulillah, I grew up with ICNA around us. We had, I can remember early on going to a convention, having to study and taking the little quiz and who was going to win the competition and reciting Quran. And those things help shape your identity, right? Yeah. I mean, I remember dreading it. My dad would say, oh my God, you have to go to the conference. I'm like, oh my God, Saturday McCormick Place or Malcolm X College, you have to go all the way down there, and it was a pain, right? But then you think about it, you reflect in hindsight, and especially in this age of my life, and those were you know, teaching moments in my life. You know, those were moments where you reflect and say, wow, we did that. Like, you know, we went and you look at it and you remember those things because those were achievements. Those were, you know, moral character building. It's identity building. And I think that is something that is irreplaceable. It serves for me even as the same purpose that Sunday school did. As much as young kids dread Sunday school getting up early, but that kind of, it's the tarbiyah that builds up and that it lasts a lifetime. And so we are grateful, alhamdulillah. I don't want anyone to walk away from this show thinking that, we have this negative view of ICNA and that we should boycott any organization. Generally speaking, we like to see our organizations succeed, and we're always going to have, problematic areas for continual improvement. And that's what we seek to do, right? We seek to give advice to each other so that we can become better, because this is a religion of advice, right? Ad-Deen nasiha.
Yeah.
We're supposed to give advice, not because we want to, downplay somebody else or mock somebody else, but rather because we want goodness for them and for you, because at the end of the day, the Muslim is a mirror to, is the mirror of the other, right?
Yeah, no, as far as advice is concerned, mashallah, perfect timing. Sheikh Dawood Walid says something amazing in the comment section. I have to read this. I usually never read the comment section. Yeah. I just opened it, came straight to his voice, straight to his post. He said, these politicians slash activists should be politely invited to conferences to sit and learn, not to speak. Unfortunately, they usually don't come to Islamic conferences or intensives unless they speak. And I think that speaks amazing volumes, lots of wisdom there. And I think that organizations, especially such as ICNA, has that power that, come and learn about Islam and see how we teach Islam, and we'll consider you as a candidate to come and speak based on what you've accumulated. And I think this is great advice. As long as you're talking about advice more. Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh Dawood Walid. You're a superstar, man. Barakallah feek.
Jazakallah khair. Dr. Muhsin, thank you for your time this afternoon. I know you got to go run pray, and for our listeners, please make sure you comment in the comment section below with your thoughts related to this episode, whether you agree with us or disagree with us, or maybe you have your own ideas about how, or questions about what we may have missed in this episode. Help us out by also clicking on the like button, and that's about it. We'll see y'all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Barakatuh.